Meanwhile, another factor hampering travelers, particularly those choosing to fly, rising costs. According to AAA, airline passengers are expected to pay 2% more this year and more than 10% more than 2019. The high price of flying has prompted senators to look into so-called junk fees that have cost customers at least $12 billion between 2018 and 2023. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. He's chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Senator, good morning. Great to have you with us. Let's just start, because I'm not sure all consumers realize that they're paying these fees. What exactly is a junk fee?
You're absolutely right, Willie, that a lot of consumers don't know about these fees and, in fact, may not discover them until after they bought the ticket. They consist of what the airlines call ancillary charges, decisions about where you sit, whether you check a bag, whether you can carry a bag onto the plane, whether you can be next to your minor child. All of these kinds of junk fees are additional charges, some as high as $300 or more. And what we have found is, in this year-long investigation by the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, getting documents, interviews, and so forth, is that an increasing share of the airline's revenue comes from these fees, and also that they are now exploring and considering the use of technology, increased use of algorithms to target these fees at individuals based on their personal characteristics. In effect, moving toward the use of artificial intelligence to set fees based on an individual's zip code or other kinds of information.
So, Senator, I imagine so many people watching at home are nodding along angrily because they've had to pay these fees, which have undeniably risen. So now that you have these findings, what's next? Is there an enforcement mechanism here? Is it something that the airlines may voluntarily change, or is there something that you guys will have to legislate away?
We're going to have a hearing on December 4th. We're going to hold them accountable. We're going to ask tough questions, and then we're going to make some recommendations. I have sponsored a measure called the Junk Fees Prevention Act, which would forestall these fees. There's also the Passenger Bill of Rights, which I have led. I'm not counting on legislation. I'm very clear-eyed about the chances of our Congress actually imposing some new laws. The Department of Transportation could use existing authority to do more. But again, under this new Trump administration, which is talking about eliminating regulation, I am going to be very clear-eyed there, too. So I think the airlines have to be pressured. And it will be difficult because there's been increased consolidation. In other words, fewer airlines. 4 of them now have 70% of the market share, and they march in lockstep often in imposing these kinds of abusive, excessive fees. I think we will have to put pressure on Congress, on the executive branch, and on the airlines themselves, and potentially through the courts seeking more competition, which the Department of Justice has begun doing through a public inquiry it's launched literally just a couple of weeks ago.
Good morning, my friend. Happy
Good morning,
Thanksgiving
Claire.
to you.
Thank you.
I think people don't really know what PSI is, and that's the committee that did this important investigation into junk fees. A long history of the PSI committee began under President Truman when he was in the Senate. He uncovered all kinds of waste in government contracting in World War II and frankly made a name for himself. Over the years, they've done amazing investigations, a really good staff. I was honored to be part of that committee for many years. Tell me what's up ahead with bipartisanship in that important committee, because historically, with very few bobbles, there have been Republicans and Democrats working together on PSI to do these important investigations. Who's going to head that committee in the next Congress, and what hope do you have that you'll be able to work with them in a bipartisan way to get to the bottom of some of the most thorny, difficult, complex problems that Americans face?
That's a great question, Claire, and you know a lot about this committee because you were a very distinguished leader of it, and it should be bipartisan. It has been bipartisan in the investigations we've been doing on Boeing, for example, and the safety culture failures there, on the Saudi takeover of the PGA Tour, which we have helped to stop so far, on other critical issues where our investigation will be ongoing, as well as on airline junk fees and other junk fees where we need to represent and protect consumers. And I hope it will be bipartisan. The next chairman is expected to be Ron Johnson, who is currently the ranking member. You know, I have a history of working with Republicans, whether it's Lindsey Graham on Ukraine or Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee on the Kids Online Safety Act. I'm going to continue to pursue bipartisan topics that will help Americans, and where the subpoena power of this committee and its fact-finding mandate can help protect Americans from these kinds of abusive and excessive practices by big corporations. It's a way of standing up to those corporations. You know about it as a former prosecutor, I do too, and we need that kind of aggressive and vigorous representation. Someone to fight for consumers in the United States Congress.
Senator, we've been talking over the last couple of weeks about the qualifications and the character, in some cases, of the choices Donald Trump has made to fill his cabinet. You're one of the few people in this country who actually has a say in the matter with your vote in the United States Senate. I'm curious if you think in the case of, for example, Pete Hegseth, who's been chosen by Donald Trump to lead the Department of Defense, or Tulsi Gabbard, who's been chosen to lead DNI, do you believe there are enough Republicans, and it doesn't take many, to cross Donald Trump, not on all these picks, but on the ones that are most of concern to you and to your Republican colleagues, that they actually may vote against Donald Trump's picks?
I think there are enough Republicans who have very serious questions, and certainly at a minimum to require FBI background checks, to know more about what these two nominees, very, very questionable in terms of their qualifications, have done in their past. Just take Pete Hegseth, for example. He is to be the Secretary of Defense, who is one of the final recommenders to the president of whether to use military force, including nuclear arms. And he has in his background these allegations and police investigation of potential sexual assault. He is supposed to be leading a department that has a history, very regrettable, of sexual assault in the ranks that we've been trying to stop. Senator Gillibrand and I have measures that have been adopted trying to forestall continued sexual assault in the military. It's a continuing scourge, and this Secretary of Defense that we have right now, Secretary Austin, has worked against it. But that's a problem that he is going to be charged with dealing with. Women in the military, which he has expressed skepticism about, something that is coming in greater numbers. So I think that there are a sufficient number of Republicans who have serious questions. They may not have decided yet that these nominees are in very questionable jeopardy, and they have a lot of explaining to do. The burden is going to be on them going forward to justify some of these statements, for example, that Gabbard has made about her allegiance to the regime of Vladimir Putin. I think that there are very serious questions they're going to have to surmount to get the 51 majority they need to be confirmed, because I think there will be Republican colleagues who will oppose them.
Republicans have raised their objections to these choices. Now we'll see if they actually cast their votes against them and cross Donald Trump. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, happy Thanksgiving to you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.